I will start by making this introduction a little bit more inclusive. So, for our visually impaired audience, I'm wearing a white pair of trousers, a black and blue jacket. I'm wearing a white with black stripes shirt, and I'm having gray short hair. The reason why I say these things to you here is because probably you don't see these people in the room, but when they will be watching it online, they need to be able to access this presentation. So, do you allow me to say that there will be a lot of words in this presentation, but be sure we will be focusing on some key elements about diversity and the importance of diversity in the age of AI. My name is Mario Hadjidamianos. I'm a cultural ambassador for Diversity Atlas, which is a DEI analytics platform, data collection and analytics platform. And let me get straight into my first question. How many data do you see available in this room? How many data do you see available in this room? Any answer is correct. Let's say how many empty chairs we have. Is that a data? Okay. How many of you have eaten something before entering this room? Okay, that was invisible data. We couldn't actually know unless we asked. Am I right? Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that usually when we are facing huge data sets, there are visible and invisible data in place, and we need to understand that most of the times what companies use are survivorship bias, which means they're relying on data they already have in place, and that's the biggest problem. In his book, Numbers and the Making of Us, Counting and the Course of Human Cultures, Brad Everett discusses that even from the cave time, people were using numerics. Maybe not in the same way we understand them today, but they were carving numerics on bones and on caves, and in this way they started quantifying their lives. Our ability to count and reckon numbers has been fundamental for modern societies. But the crucial question is how number has developed our tongue, our language, our communication skills. And this is something that we will delve into in a few minutes. 50 years ago, the data analytics and statistics science took a huge turn from being theoretical into becoming a little bit more practical. People were naming it the data science, and the contributions of Bryman, Cleveland, Chambers, and Takei were actually the people to whom we own everything that we are discussing today. The question is, does culture drive our use of data, or does data drive our cultures? What would you say? Both ways. Lovely, that's a good answer, but in the early days of internet, actually data were driving us. Now as content generators and producers, we are driving data. You see? In 1988, our founder and CEO, Peter Musafiriadis, dedicated his life to bring cultural divides, particularly within Australia's diverse communities. His mission has always been to ensure inclusion and visibility for everyone. In 2002, he founded Cultural Infusion, and over the past 22 years, we developed various products, applications, and initiatives in order to bridge that gap. To lead the development, that entire structure led to the development of Diversity Atlas, a tool designed to transform theoretical statistics into actionable insights. And here, you can see some of the tools that we have in the market at the moment. I will only highlight Cultural Infusion because each year we are providing intercultural projects and programs to over 3,500,000 kids in schools in Australia. And this has been happening for the past 20 years. Among other products, of course, you see Diversity Atlas. And the most important thing is that the slogan that I'm using for today's presentation is actually the slogan that won the Unicao Intercultural Innovation Award, Diversified We Grow. Here, you can see a little bit more about our clients and the research partners that help us develop Diversity Atlas. As you can see, our platform is also compliant with ISO protocols, with GDPR protocols, with InfoSec, and at the same time, it has been evaluated about its security status from our clients. You can imagine what it is to undergo in compliance and risk management from AWS. It takes months. So, the world spends 14.3 trillion in 2023 dealing with conflict that has a cultural dimension. Can you imagine? That is the entire amount of money that we spend in 1 year for conflicts based on cultural differences. If culture-based conflict is so ubiquitous, why aren't we not putting culture at the heart of all education? This is something our founder strongly supports. And this is where I'm start getting hot and hotter and hotter. Okay. Yes. The definition of cultural diversity has been poorly defined, analytically neglected, and suffers from inaccurate and exclusive measurement methods. How you can actually contribute to your bottom line without an inclusive understanding of who you are. So my first questions will be repeated. Do you actually know who is sitting next to you? No, we could never imagine. But what about if I told you that by undertaking a survey in less than 5 minutes, we can identify over 45,000 cultural imprints of you people in here, in this room? Although you are a small group, your data behind you in terms of culture are large in volumes. Why measure cultural diversity? So, not that long ago, researchers from various universities across the globe decided that they wanted to evaluate how data affects daily lives, and especially issues like security and foreign affairs. Their work highlighted the gaps in research and the importance of data in shaping policies. We concur with their findings, and measuring cultural diversity is crucial, not only for understanding, but also for addressing complex issues. And to this end, Diversity Atlas is established above what we call humanity's global dataset. We have 45,000 cultural indicators in place for everyone to self-ID themselves. And I will explain how important this is. UNESCO describes culture as a key driver of sustainable development and tool for eradicating poverty, essential for quality education, and crucial for building cohesive and peaceful communities. At the same time, culture drives innovation by fostering diverse perspectives. What better way to fuel creativity and advancement than by integrating the rich, varied insights of diverse cultures? Where stands the problem? What kind of data? What kind of data can we put together in order to bridge cultural gaps rather than making them bigger? The cost of exclusion is one good reason to think about it. And when I'm not talking about the cost of exclusion, I'm sure many of you have heard recently all this movement about the inclusion of LGBTQI population or people with disabilities in business environments. Just see the number that says if we don't do so and we keep excluding people based on gender and disability, this will continue costing us $24.65 trillion yearly. Can you imagine that loss for companies? We can discuss talent acquisition. We can discuss mutuality between an operational and managerial team to their audiences and their clients and actually everyone and anyone. If only we knew who these people were without interfering to their personal lives. And trust me when I say, when you send out a survey and you send it via an email account or via a Google form, you can be sure that people won't tell you their entire truth. The reason why is because they can be easily identified. they leave you with an email, which means you can track back the answers to the person that actually gave them to you. At the same time, when we decided that we wanted to build this database and make this database accessible for everyone, it was a notion of what makes culture, what culture is made of. Any ideas? Language is culture. The way you eat is culture. The way you sleep is culture. The way you date is culture. The way you're tutoring your kids is culture. The way you're treating your grandparents is culture. The way your friends come to your house and you open it to welcome them and you cook them your favorite recipe from another country that you visited not that long ago when you were studying. That is culture. And this culture stands for indicators that one is now able to identify. Just to give you an example, I already mentioned that we use 45,000 cultural self-identification indicators, but only for one project in Nigeria. For one project only, we are now introducing 450 tribes and over 470 dialects. Because when we are talking culture, we are talking understanding. And it's not us going there and talking our thoughts, but rather us being able to understand what these people feel and how these people want to be represented and how these people want to be reflected in our data sets. Not us deciding to putting them in boxes because we just have this kind of data in place from our previous experience. So each and every round of data acquisition needs to have this extra layer of adjusting to the cultural norms, or at least being able to identify cultural characteristics that can enhance the rest of the process of data evaluation. And before introducing them to any kind of algorithm, we need to be sure that all these data are non-biased. Here is an example. As you can see in Diversity Atlas, we use 7 pillars. One of the pillars is country. We have over 248 countries, but we are not just asking the country you might be residing. We are also asking, let's say, countries that you lived before and might have affected the way you do what you do. Languages, 9.5K. Worldviews and religion, 7.1K. And just to give you an idea what I mean, in terms of worldviews, I belong to what one might say Two-Spirit. Are you familiar with the term Two-Spirit? Okay, the term Two-Spirit belongs to the native tribes of the US, and it means the betweener, the bridges, the ones that are able to guide the younger generation into becoming part of the society, both males and females. It's not about sexuality, it's not about gender, but it's a philosophy grown within a societal structure that we are not even able to identify because it's been destroyed. At the same time, we have cultural heritages, 10K. And when we are talking cultural heritage, let me ask you, would one like to share where their grandparents might be coming from? Anyone? Okay, please.
I have the Spanish grandparent, an Italian grandparent, a French grandparent, and a house grandparent.
Okay, Spanish, Italian, French. Okay, this ancestry, it's crucial because probably it shaped the way you see the world while growing up. Another kind of ancestry coming from the country that I resigned to, and I am coming from, Greece. When we do the survey in Greece, not that many months ago, the identities of Cappadocian Greek or Antiochian Greek or Ionian Greek were even on top of the identity of Greek, which means that people have a tendency to lean in their ancestry, either because it helps them grow or because it helps them anchor their values into day-to-day living. At the same time, of course, we are covering demographic, personal attributes, education, gender, sexuality, but that's just the surface. And the last thing I want you to focus is the lived experience. Probably many of you in here might have studied in another country, and that changed your perception about the way you live. Others may have spent your entire summertime in Greece, let's say, and now you want to treat your beloved ones with Greek recipes. Who knows? These are things that are undergone into your system and your perception via acculturation, which is not a cognitive process. These things come because you want them to come in your life, and you don't even know it when it happens. But let me focus on the seventh pillar that discusses mutuality. What is mutuality in simple norm and in simple terms? Mutuality is a condition where you are entering a room and you are able to see yourself reflected in that room. When I first came in London, I went with a bank because the guy behind the cashier was having a mohawk of 14 colors. He was wearing piercing through his ears, and he was having so many tattoos that you could design an entire new world on his hand. And I said, that's me. I can do that. I can wear my earrings, I can wear my mohawk, and I can come to the office every day feeling myself. And this is mutuality. So, as you realize, human identity is complex, and when we're discussing complexities is the fact that most of the companies you have in here today, they are talking about culture of data, data analytics, algorithmic fitting, and development of AI solution. But what's missing is who is providing them the data and where these data are coming from. And do excuse me, but I will use a really harsh example to make this simple understood. If we go into the judicial system of Europe and we start gathering all the data available to the legal system of each and every country in Europe about the Roma nation, and you ask an AI to create a new city or a new neighborhood, probably AI will develop a jail. Because most of the decisions are against these people. And these are the data in place. So how we are to provide a new solution, a new take, when we are only basing ourselves to those survivorship bias, the ones in place and not something new to lean into. The dual challenge is to promote fairness while avoiding unintended discriminatory effects, and this requires careful considerations of both the data inputs to algorithms and the algorithms themselves. Let's see why. Because data drives information, information drives knowledge, and knowledge drives wisdom. This is the only way to use data. There is no other way. If you don't create a concrete baseline of data that can transform and visualize into compatible information, then you cannot develop knowledge. You cannot drive yourself to the next step. And the next step is becoming wise about your data, how to use them, and when to act, having them in place. And this is what you can actually see when using Diversity Atlas. You can see that from inclusive data collection, we move to the multifactorial and intersectional evaluation. What intersectionality means is that you can take, let's say, an example of languages, positions, and education. And you can make an entire evaluation about where your team stands in terms of operations, in terms of productivity, in terms of profitability. And you can do the same thing for another team in the same department that resides in a different country and has different characteristics. For the second team, let's say I will go with disabilities, with experience and worldviews. If you do this intersectional analysis, you will end up realizing that most of the times what creates success it's not that solid database you had in place, but the factors that allowed you to intersectionally evaluate these data sets. And this is where we stand now. Do you still believe that this tracker is on? Yeah, it is. It's still on. This came out yesterday. And the reason why this came out yesterday is because algorithmic systems rely on inputs, and the quality of these inputs is crucial. For example, Pokemon Go almost died when they provided wrong GPS inputs, driving people to private to private houses or military establishments, or even it was driving them to the middle of nowhere in a desert and the people were standing like this, trying to find the Pokemon. So, there are some key issues that we need to realize that belong to poorly selected data, incomplete or outdated data, the selection bias, as we already mentioned, and the historical bias. These are the problems regarding the inputs we offer to an algorithm. Then we have the problem with the design of the algorithm itself. So for people not really into all this data science, it looks like a Pandora's box. And this Pandora's box, it's ready to let loose every evil to the world. And this lies most of the times to data representation, poorly designed matching systems, personalization and recommendation services, assuming correlation implies causation, and access and participation. But I would say that most of the time what I've been hearing out there is data fundamentalism. Sorry? Yeah, fundamentalism. Which means that whomever has the number has the truth. I'm not really sure I can support that opinion that freely or be sure about it. So how Socrates would think about data? It's not only about using data to have something that is called life, but you need to have data in place to achieve what Socrates thinks was even more crucial, a good life. And to get there, the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers has established a division dedicated to technology ethics, continually updating the standards. I believe this conversation that we are having here today should be titled Ethics in AI Analytics and Data Analysis and Acquisition. That's what's missing, because most of the time, ethics don't follow up with business models. And if you don't have an ethic compass, then your business model will get you to places you didn't even dreamed of. So, how we can change things? By identifying harms to privacy and security, harms to fairness and justice, harms to transparency and autonomy as the most common harmful data practices. At the same time, we can see that the most beneficial data practices are human understanding, social, institutional, and economic efficiency, predictive accuracy, and personalization. These are the two sides of the same coin. The most common challenges in data collection and usage, ethical challenges in appropriate data collection and use, identifying and addressing ethically harmful data biases. So how do you help anyone see themselves in our nuanced data set? By validation and testing of data models. We have over 300 people in our advisory committee before introducing a new data set to the platform. We have effective training and use of data analytics. What you see there, and it's called the rule of 20, means that our data platform will never provide an answer if the cohort measured is under 20 people, ever. We won't give that to anyone because, again, them 20 people can be easily identified in any given environment. And of course, the understanding of personal and social and business impact, which is more than 300 literature reviews for us, and we are still going on in our path. So cultural diversity and AI can be summarized as an essential to humanity as biodiversity is to environment, and its culture holds unique knowledge and value. To ensure AI reflects our diverse world, it must be developed by people from a broad, representative range of backgrounds. And if you can imagine, that phrase I actually read to you came out from an AI, machine learning algorithm. That was the answer. How can I actually help better fix this? And the answer was representative range of backgrounds. People will drive technology. Technology will never drive people in any given way. So when Peter Musafiriadis developed that slogan, Diversified, we grow, it was about emphasizing the value of diversity in driving innovation and solving challenges. As we move forward, let us remember that data and technology are tools that can either bridge gaps or deepen divides. For us, the choice was simple. We will build them bridges for everyone to pass. And the only way to do so is to creating the most inclusive data set in the world that it's still growing, hoping to be the partners for them companies to add this extra layer in their data analytics. I thank you for having me today, and I hope this a little bit more philosophical presentation about what we are doing here was equally interesting. Thank you. Supposingly, we have a couple of minutes for questions for anyone who would like. Okay. Okay, one here and one. Are we having 1 minute for questions? There are two at least. Okay, please tell me, and I will ask the.
So what would be the best way to overcome unconscious bias in an organization by using this?
Okay, what is the best way to overcome unconscious bias in an organization was the question that came. And let me tell you how Diversity Atlas works. When using Diversity Atlas, you're using a QR code or a link that is fully anonymous. So whomever is answering cannot be identified. And the answers comes out in a horizontal way rather than a personal and vertical way. In this way, we are actually securing the environment, and by producing the results of the survey, we actually give insights to the organization to identify what biases are in place and how to overcome them. Okay, the gentleman had another question, the last one.
One at the back. Yeah, I was going to ask, okay, so we've seen in the political sphere recently with things like Twitter, for example, I mean X, I should probably say, you talked about deepening divides because people can get caught in an algorithm and ultimately that leads to further deepening divides and only one view of an opinion. What do you think a philosopher like Socrates would be saying about that and how it's controlling or having such a massive impact on society, and what do you think is the way that these social media platforms should actually be approaching this situation in order to improve it?
I would go and refer Plato describing Socrates in one of his most famous quotes, I only know one thing, that I know nothing. So when we are entering this kind of interactive environments, we need to keep our focus widened and start understanding why we are using these platforms. Behind these platforms, the metadata analytics are usually based on feeds provided by the users themselves, and they are not blind. Everyone who is behind them platforms know how to do the analysis by focusing on certain IPs, focusing on certain keywords, or focusing on certain attributes they are looking for. For us, if we want to blind the system and generate an inclusive and a diversified conclusion about this metadata analysis, I will go again into taking out those biased approaches that come with words like female, over 40. That's the simplest way to go, because you don't know if that female belongs to a single-parent family. You don't know if she has arthritis. You don't know what she underwent when she was young. You don't even know where she resides, but you only focus on the fact that she's a female over 40 years old, and that put her in a focus group that is wrong. I want to thank you all, but this was all for today, and I will welcome your questions if you have another one right outside this hall. Thank you.